Hello, my name is Matthew Mueller, and I'm a PhD candidate in mechanical engineering at Tufts University and a research assistant at the Center for Engineering Education and Outreach. This summer, I had the opportunity to take my second trip to Japan to share the work of the CEEO, run STEM workshops with students, and learn about their culture as it relates to maker education. The trip was sponsored by Masao Ishihara, a former LEGO education distributor and more recently the leader of Rasmussen Consulting in Japan that trains facilitators in the LEGO Serious Play methodology. Masao is also a big advocate for hands-on STEM education in Japan and Southeast Asia, so he has sponsored trips for a number of graduate students from the CEEO. Another goal of my trip this year was to try and get a little sample of how maker education practices are being taken up in schools and communities. Similar to my trip to Japan last summer, the workshops I ran were focused on either basic robotics or the science of sound and music. I was able to improve the format of the sound workshop by building off my experience helping to facilitate Bill and Build's music last October. Rather than use common found materials to build any instrument from your imagination, a prompt that has tended to produce mostly percussion instruments, I designed a kit that allows each student to make their own cardboard box guitar with rubber band strings. I designed the flat template of cuts and folds for the instrument and laser cut it out of chipboard. Once the base is taped into a box, the students can add rubber bands of different thicknesses and tensions by tying knots and inserting them into the laser cut holes. The version that I brought with me had two sets of fold-out bridges to hold up the strings over the top surface. Then I provided straws and wooden sticks for students to create their own bridges for the other strings. The other tool I developed to help facilitate the science of sound and music workshops was a contact mic box that amplifies and allows users to hear the vibrations traveling through a solid material when touching it. The boxes that I designed contain a piezo sensor contact microphone that's placed in a bottle cap so it can be held onto a surface and transmit vibrations, a circuit board and a battery to amplify the signal coming from the mic, and a headphone jack and volume knob for the users to hear the vibrations. Instructions for both the music box and the contact mic box can be found on my website, coolstuffbymatt.com. My trip started in Tokyo, and my first set of music workshops was at a multicultural learning school called Unicul Academy with two groups, one with K through second grade students and another with upper elementary and middle year students. I first introduced the contact mic boxes and had groups of students go around the room to listen to how different materials sound when you tap on them. We then discussed how real instruments are made and how vibrations travel through the instruments' bodies to make it sound good. Next, we started building the music boxes as a group, stopping to do some experimentation with rubber bands to figure out what makes some rubber bands sound higher or lower pitched. As students started to add strings to their instruments, I prompted them to listen to the instruments through the contact mic boxes. This worked as a great demonstration of how the strings make the whole box vibrate when the kids were able to hear the sound of their string amplified even when the contact mic was touching the bottom of the box. The next stop on my trip was to Nagoya, where I ran workshops with the founder of the Kids Learning Center, a STEM education center that uses Lego bricks and robots in many of their hands-on learning activities. The first workshop of the day was another Science of Sound and Music workshop, but the two other workshops that day were robotics themed for beginner students using the We Do One set. I challenged them to invent and build an amusement park ride for their minifig. It was a great introductory activity for the beginners and pushed them to create something totally from scratch. After returning to Tokyo and making a day trip to run music and robotics workshops at the Children's University in Tsukuba, Masao and I traveled north to Akita to run another music workshop. While in Akita, I was able to visit Akita University, where I was shown around their facilities by Professor Kamiya from the Engineering Sciences Department. I was shown around their fabrication spaces and learned about the outreach that they do sponsoring rocket building competitions for young students, as well as the types of design challenges they do with their university students. While they didn't have many rapid prototyping tools or building space, it seems like they place more emphasis on the entrepreneurial side of making by offering resources and encouraging university students to pursue their ideas professionally. The last stop on the trip was to Singapore, where I ran the Science of Sound and Music workshop with 3 different groups of different ages from early elementary to high school students. I had the opportunity to talk with the high school students during lunch and hear about the water robotics projects that they've been working on in their engineering class. From my conversations with the educators, it seems like more project-based activities are being introduced into schools, but they are generally fairly prescribed projects. I was also able to look around a community makerspace in Singapore called One Maker Group that is a leader in the Southeast Asia Makerspace Network, or SEAMNet. The space was very well organized and offered a regular program of educational workshops as introductions to their various tools, as well as offering prototyping services. Overall, it was a great trip. I was able to share the CEEO's ideas that kids can do anything through my workshops and talking with educators, and I learned a lot about the culture of education and started to gain some perspective on how maker education fits into it. Thank you for watching, and please feel free to contact me with any comments or questions.